Hi, it's really great to be here. So I am now Dr. Mitch. I'll take that name. I've never been called Dr. Mitch before, but I actually like that, so that's very simple. I'm going to show some of the work that we're doing in Brooklyn, New York, in the Navy Yard at New Lab. We run a 501c3 urban design think tank where we put technology in cities, and we do that at all different scales and all different types of tech. So the first thing I want to show you is one of the problems we've been working on for a long time. Actually, a lot of our problems are wicked problems. They are at least 5 years or longer. And this is thinking about population in cities. What would happen, or what does it look like if we get to the end of the century and we have 11 billion people on this planet Earth? So we did this project for the Venice Biennale. We used a form of analog computation. We actually were growing E. coli to do population counts. And I'm going to show this short video in a minute, then I'm going to go back to other work that we've been doing in infrastructure, transportation design, architecture, and housing. You'll see soon enough. So let's start with this video. I think it's really a great introduction.
In the next 100 years, we can expect human population to reach 11 billion people. Is this something that is sustainable? The largest amount of people on this planet Earth live inside this circle. We use the Buckminster Fuller Dymaxion map to take a view of the world and look at the 25 densest cities on the planet Earth. Our biomap displays population density as a parametric graph on the front. The back zooms in on each of these cities designed and built and grown inside petri dishes. We chose colonies of E. coli as a method of demonstrating exponential population growth. Population density was represented in two different forms of fluorescent E. coli. Red represented future projections of population density, while green represented existing conditions you would find in cities. Biology is technology. Genetic modifications of benign strains of E. coli were carried out at GenSpace, the world's first community-based biotech laboratory. Genes cloned from bioluminescent oceanic animals, such as jellyfish and coral, were introduced to bacteria by transformation. These genes encoded information that would enable our transformed microbes to synthesize either GFP or RFP, two brightly fluorescent proteins. The transformed E. coli were then incubated overnight on petri dish plates containing agar-based media with antibiotics to select our genetically modified strains. Individual bacteria divided through repeated population doublings to produce colonies containing millions of cells. Each selected cell now expressed our clone proteins. We then used high-speed centrifugation to concentrate our colonies of transgenic E. coli. Stencils derived from CAD files would shape the E. coli into specific geometries that would show or display the current conditions in cities. We wanted to move away from the current paradigm of studying population through computation. We wanted a different method to explore how humans might affect the Earth. Cartographers, urban planners, biologists, and architects, all working to think about a map of the near future of human population.
So that was just one of our projects. It gives you an idea of the diverse backgrounds and the different disciplines we work with when it comes to thinking about problems that are very difficult to solve, even communicating those problems. Another thing that we work on, or the larger picture, is thinking about what the smart city is. So here's one of our kind of a series of ideations, I guess, in one image to show folks, and that's not necessarily super elite people, or it's actually people like Homer Simpson, what the smart city might be like. We actually think of it as a city that's a combination of intelligent networks and also considering the environment in an intelligent manner. We call it the socio-ecological city. So here we replace sewage systems with riparian corridors in the center of our streets that are daylighted. We have different vertical farms and green walls for air quality and food production with some level of automation and care. We have light rail systems instead of cars everywhere. And we privilege walkability. The pedestrians in the street are probably the most important thing, the interface of the foot. So this is just one way we kind of think about what the smart city is. Because if you ask, I don't know, 5 or 10 people what it is, you're going to get different definitions. And we also work specifically on the technologies that fit those cities. So here's some of the work that I had done at MIT and then taken on into Terraform. We were looking at vehicle design. And the crazy thing about that is that cars, since Henry Ford, have pretty much always been shiny, metal, precious boxes. So one of the things I was thinking of, could we make cars soft? Could we actually design them to fit cities? Not the entire 20th century, which is cities designed around the automobile, but a technology to specifically fit how we move around our cities. So these vehicles are soft, they have technologies embedded in them, such as e-ink, which tracks the driver's viewpoint. Wherever it looks, it creates an aperture. The vehicle itself is made out of different types of air bladders or ETFE foil quilts, so it's as soft as possible. In fact, this version is called the Hug and Kiss Lamb car. It's the softest car you can imagine. It doesn't need to move faster than 30 miles an hour because that's the speed limit in places like New York, Paris, and Shanghai. The car is designed to rub up against other vehicles, so they occasionally bump into one another and they scuff other cars, and that's okay. They move in flocks and herds, and if you do bump up against somebody, you can look out your window and say hi, and you're all right. And then you'd phase them into cities. So you can imagine it's not going to happen overnight. You'd have a lot of these super smart, intelligent, omnidirectional vehicles moving in clusters controlled by a municipal grid. And when they find something like a Hummer, the Hug and Kiss Lamb cars surround it and they push it off the side of the road as they take over the streets. And these cars are also, they're not just vehicles that are soft. There's other variants where we think about energy in cities. So they have very smart batteries on wheels that could absorb peak demand and redistribute charge on the fly. So the base technology of the combustion engine is gone, and we think about retooling our antiquated electric grids with our mobility systems at the same time. And that we've also taken various of these designs to different locales. Here's one that Terraform had done for Shanghai with dedicated lanes for sort of faster moving transport, and then other lanes where you can just go locally, and then parking them directly on the street, such as this. This version, also done with some folks at MIT, is another version of the car that is super small, designed to actually never be parked. The vehicle, when it is parked, it takes up a minimum footprint, but the vehicle is always moving. It's a shared ownership model. It's kind of a Facebook on wheels. It has an articulating frame that stands up, reducing its footprint by 33% while it's charging via induction. The next car comes in and interlocks with that vehicle, so you can get around 300 of these cars on a New York City block, as opposed to something like 30 or 40 SUVs. You take any car you would like, because you buy into it as if it was a utility, so you don't own it. And then you move around to where you want to go, you get off, and someone else gets in. And that's the concept there. And there's many types of these vehicles. The one that we actually built is called the Heroku, which you can purchase for around 18,000 euros. It was actually made in Spain with Korean money, and that was the former Prime Minister of the European Union inside that car. And then if it's not just about vehicle design, we think about technology when it comes to growing our food in cities. So here's a project we worked on called the Urban Farm Pod, or Plug-in Ecology. This is essentially a sphere that's made out of milled components, robotically milled components. It could be 4 feet in size, or it could be 14 feet in size, and you grow your food on the exterior. It belongs on top of a rooftop, an urban balcony, inside your apartment. It's part cabin and part farm, but you know where your food is coming from. So here's something that you can grow. This is wheatgrass or spirulina. You grow it on the outside of your farm. It takes X amount of time. You harvest it, you put it in your salad, and you have a relationship with your food that's disappearing every single day, especially here in New York. We have Arduino systems that plug in and tell you things like when your spirulina, which is something you could grow in your farm pod, is ripe, the coloration, its pH balance, etc. So that tech is basically hooked up to your phone and lets you know when your food is ready to go. Here we are showing that app in process, which is great. And then other forms of food are thinking about meat in cities. So we're expecting to double the amount of protein consumption, that's cows, pigs, chicken, lamb, that we eat even now, every day in the city of New York. And can we possibly sustain ourselves by eating all of those animals? And do we want to constantly eat those animals anyway? And is there an alternate form? Yes, there is. This was our client. We did research with crickets for some years. We were looking at bug protein that came from the United Nations in 2013 saying we need to wean ourselves off of those other animals and consider eating bugs. 80% of the world does it, but we don't do it in Europe and America. So we provided a system that would do that. And we looked at the implications, which is roughly in this chart, you can see it, 2,000 gallons less water than a cow for the same gram of protein from a cricket, and 300 times less carbon in the atmosphere if you eat bug powder versus eating a cow. Now, I don't want to eat a screaming face. I don't like eating, strange legs and wings of bugs. We mill this into a flour, and it's produced in a very hygienic, super sanitized environment. So this is our cricket shelter and modular farm system. With these dialogue gates, we feed crickets lime rinds, orange peels, apple cores. We tune the flavor of their body's metabolism, and you get crickets that go from pasture to plate inside cities. So not using all that land use for cattle way outside New York and other cities, but actually growing your alternate form of protein inside New York and working with chefs directly so you can tune their flavor. And the farms are modular, so they can expand and you can grow as many crickets as you would like. We actually don't kill them instantly. We treat them like sentient creatures. They live throughout their 6 weeks of life, which is their end of life cycle. When they get really old, we actually turn the temperature down. They begin to hibernate. They fall asleep. And then when they're asleep at the end of life, we mill them into our flour. And then looking at home systems. So if it's not just food or mobility, we're thinking about new technologies that fit inside our housing issues, especially when it comes to peri-urban conditions on the outside of our cities. So here's a technology that's 2,500 years old. It's called grafting, or bleaching inosculate matter to form one contiguous vascular system. We're essentially using woody plants on scaffolds that are milled and shape the plants into a desirable geometry for humans to live in. And then we plant them, and we let them grow, and they form a village that thousands of families can live in with a positive contribution to the environment. In this home, which is called the Fab Trehab, there is no distinction between the landscape and the home itself. In fact, they're one. It respects all kinds of flora and fauna on the outside. We do know it takes a modicum of time to grow a home like this, and I think that's okay if you wait 7 to 10 years to grow an entire village, because we wait 12 years for a bottle of scotch. I think we can wait X amount of time to grow houses that fit into our local ecosystems. And then finally, the last project we were doing, sponsored by Intel, was thinking of the most ecological building you could fit for New York City. And there we've done a lot of things in thinking about buildings. This is a real site in New York. It's essentially in Soho, off of Lafayette, Cleveland Place area. And it's looking at a building facade technology that's unlike any we've seen before. And the perspective here is to think it's not just about the tech, and it's not just about making cities that are smart, but it's about respecting other forms of life, because that becomes the principal driver for why we want to do this. So we looked at essentially a butterfly, the monarch, that is almost extinct. We lost 1 billion monarch butterflies in North America since 1993. And how can we bring them back? Can we rewild New York City with monarch butterflies using new forms of tech and do it in a logic that makes sense for both the butterflies and for humans? So we thought of a building skin or a facade system that would be a sanctuary for our butterflies and also provide the right climactic systems for people on the inside. So we're taking a series of measurements inside the building and around the building and capturing all kinds of data with our tech. So we're actually learning about wind pressure, air speed, humidity, noise, pollution, etc. We're capturing it outside and inside the building, all for the purpose of making the best sanctuary for butterflies and also for making a better building for people. We're doing that in a number of ways. So we have a modified drone system, a micro drone, that is actually an artificial butterfly. It's got different sensors attached to it. There's a few hundred of these drones. They fly in and outside of the facade of the building, and they take those readings. We also anticipate that in buildings, future delivery systems will be provided by drones, and they'll be dropping off things inside our buildings. So how do you possibly negotiate the interior and the exterior when you have thousands of these things flying outside? And who controls the information of those weather patterns that are at a much smaller scale than a region? Today, when we think about cities and we think about weather patterns, it's at the scale of a region, not at the scale of a neighborhood. So we need that data and we need that feedback so that way we can simply control where those drones go and where we can anticipate an entire traffic control system for more delivery systems of drones. So here is the facade itself, thinking about the artificial butterflies, now the living butterflies. We have milkweeds that are on the exterior. We grow them at a really fast rate. The butterflies love milkweeds. That's where their chrysalises are. That's where, or chrysali, sorry. That's where the caterpillars actually thrive, and that's where we have all these butterflies being born, and then eventually, after X amount of time, they can migrate to the exterior and populate the rest of New York. And here you can see those hanging sacks and hanging rods of different milkweeds that are controlled partially by the artificial butterflies that serve as stewards to take care of the living butterflies. And then this is a room on the inside where you can see that once you're in this space, out your window, you'll see a vertical meadow of these butterflies enjoying your space on the inside that's super comfortable and controlled for an environment that makes sense for people as well as for these creatures. Anyway, that's just some of the work that Terraform's doing in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It's really great to share it with you, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you.